Welcome to the REV Your Agency podcast, the most candid and authentic life insurance and annuity podcast that is hell-bent on helping you be more honest, ethical, productive, and profitable. Tune in and you're going to get exclusive access to the industry's top tools, tips, tricks, and resources from the biggest and most effective producers on earth. You're going to hear real-life stories of agents that went from nothing to something, zero to hero, and how changing the lives of their clients has changed their own lives financially. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and share it with someone you think will find value as well. Yeah, how's life?
Life is good. Life is good. We're in Savannah, Georgia. We moved here after January of 2021, so never been to Savannah, didn't know anybody. We just picked up after 2020 and we didn't rent a car. We rented an apartment, I should say, and we packed up our 2 cars and 2 kids and 2 dogs and came down here. So it's been a wild ride, wild adventure, but amazing nonetheless, for sure. But I still live in Chicago.
What made you decide on that part of the world?
I have no idea, dude. It was random. We knew we wanted to be somewhere warm. That was it. That was like so we looked at San Diego and Arizona and, all different places. And we just decided Savannah, why not?
Warm and sticky sounded better.
Yeah. 3 months of warm and sticky. It's better than, 6 months of cold and snowy, right? And rainy.
I've never met anybody coming out of Chicago that left for other reasons. I mean, there might be some additional reasons like, politics or, crime or something like that. Not that it's out of control, or maybe it is out of control.
No, yeah, those are all factors: taxes, politics, crime.
Number one thing is always the weather, though, dude.
The weather took the cake, right? I would literally every year, and everybody in Chicago, bitches about the weather basically. And every year, we're all wondering, like, what are we doing here still? Why don't we just move? And for the first time one year, I'm like, you know what? Let's just do it. And my wife agreed, and we just did it, and it's been amazing.
Damn, dude, that's cool. Well, dude, yeah, I want you to tell the folks about yourself, because you're not an insurance agent. This is primarily an insurance podcast, right? But there's a big reason why I brought you on. In fact, I've had people slide in my DMs and like, hey, in your Facebook group, who's this Brian guy that just keeps posting every freaking day incessantly? And I'm like, that's a dude doing work, and he's also bringing value that every insurance agent can use. Like, if you're not using that value, you're stupid, in my opinion. You're consistent as hell, and it's always valuable stuff. So would you mind just kind of telling folks a little bit about yourself, what it is you do, and why you and I jive and get along, and why you're valuable for an insurance agent, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I've made a lot of mistakes in hiring or putting the right people in the wrong seats or the wrong people in the right seats, and banged my head against the wall long enough where I finally had to figure it out. I was a business coach for other businesses. I had my own business and problems. And, it just came to a point that no matter how good our systems and processes were, and how good our strategy was, it all came down to having the right people in the right seats actually executing that strategy. So what I do is I help companies essentially use the scientifically validated behavioral assessments that are out there to be used for pre-hire and selection to get the right people into the right seats using objective data rather than, our subjective guessing. I'm sure quite a few of us, probably, if you're not deploying data, are hiring based on subjectivity and if you like the person. But there's a lot more to individuals that, we recommend you look at. Are they wired for the role? And not can they do something, but will they do it, and how long and how well?
Yeah. Dude, so talk to me about that, because I've used, and I know a lot of insurance agents. In fact, most firms require that you do some sort of a POP test or DISC assessment or something. And I know at the local agency level, I've done it, I've not done it. My biggest frustrations with it are that I don't feel like, I paid some company to help me with, I paid them thousands and thousands of dollars to help me with this, like we're running DISC or Crystal or whatever, right? And we're getting these assessments, and they're like, oh, you're an FEL red YY6 L7 weenie, and they're a blue or whatever, right? And I'm like, okay, great. And they're like, well, here's 40 pages of reports on that. Read up about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, this means the words make sense, but on a day-to-day basis, I'm not here to sit here and babysit how I'm going to interact with the person.
Right.
And so a lot of those relationships went to the wayside, but I still believe in hiring from the gut, but I also believe in hiring from the gut when you had a good feeling about the person who made sense in the first place. Like, I think that's the smartest thing to do. So
yeah. Well, I'm a very subjective person. My basis for judgment is gut and intuition. In fact, most of the time, the biggest mistakes I've ever made with choosing people or making decisions on people were where I ignored my intuition and my gut. But some people are objective in their basis for decision making, and that's actually something we measure. Now, being a very subjective person and making many mistakes and getting it wrong so many times, you can either keep pointing the finger at everybody else and blame them, like they just didn't try hard enough or they didn't do this. But ultimately, as a leader, you have to look in the mirror and say, okay, maybe I'm missing something. So to your point, you've tried many assessments. This is kind of the problem, right? They all get lumped into this bucket. And when some of them don't work, they're kind of all like, oh, this is just kind of like some, woo-woo astrology stuff. And, it's just a pain in the butt to implement. DISC is a great tool. It's designed for post-hire. On their website, it says, do not use this for pre-hire. So it's just not designed for it. It was never intended to be used for hiring. A lot of other ones, Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, you name it. They're all good and they have their gold. But I like to say, if you're at a steakhouse and you're going to cut a steak, use the right tool for the job, right? Use a steak knife. Don't use a spoon. A spoon could work, but you're kind of finagling it to work, and it's probably not going to be very effective. A spoon's great for ice cream, just not great for steak. Just like hiring. DISC is amazing for coaching and communication. The downfall is that big stat, right? This is the biggest problem with consultants. I hate the term consultant. I'm kind of more of an anti-consultant consultant. And the model that we use with predictive index is one of the assessments that are actually scientifically validated out of the 800. We essentially use it's for hiring. So we create a behavioral job target for the role. And it's really easy. You just basically take all the stakeholders, the owner, a manager's manager, somebody in HR, anybody who has good visibility into that role. And then you want to just have them fill out the job assessment for what the behavioral demands of the role are going to be. Then you get 4 or 5 different inputs from stakeholders. And then we reconcile the differences and we create this job target. And that's the secret sauce of using these for hiring. And that's why DISC doesn't work. They don't have that. Once you have a job target, you can stack thousands of candidates against that job target and they get a score of a 1 to 10 for a behavioral match. But there's also a cognitive piece. So we're not measuring IQ, right? IQ is kind of like size of the sponge. We're measuring general cognitive ability or how quickly that sponge absorbs water. And it's essentially how quickly people will ramp up or how quickly they'll learn a new industry, or if they have to constantly stay on top of learning new things, that's going to give you a good indicator or objective indicator of how quickly they can learn new things. But when you take both of those combined and you measure, the candidate and how they're wired behaviorally versus the job target, you can predict job success over a long period of time. Of course, they have to still meet your culture or values. They have to have some experience if that's important to you. But you want to look at the whole person and include the behavioral piece of it all as well.
That's interesting. And I in hindsight, all the things I've tried, the common denominator, the failure there was me, right? To your point, I was the common denominator in the failure. I think the thing that I would have appreciated, because I didn't just go get a DISC subscription, or all the programs I've ever used were through HR firms.
Right.
And part of the firm's job was to be a consultant. Here's how to use it. Here's how to. So maybe what sets you guys apart in a little bit about what you do, or you're not just a software broker for these tests. What is it you're actually doing? You and I have talked about this a little bit. It's been probably a year and a half since we had that combo, but yeah, that was one of the things that stood out to me, frankly, was that whole conversation.
Got it. So the big difference in why I call myself an anti-consultant consultant is because I know kind of the game, right? You come in, you do the half day or full day with the executive team and leadership team. You get everybody excited. You give them the 40-page reports. And then a week later, the reports are in the drawer. The big difference with what I do with Predictive Index is we do a knowledge transfer training to your leadership team. So it's usually a day or 2 days, depending on if you want to learn hiring plus leading and managing your existing team members. They're kind of split into two, but they're both run from that same single assessment. And the assessment takes like 5 minutes to do. So all candidates, all employees get it. It's not like a per drink kind of thing. So we're teaching your leadership team how to be, essentially mini PI experts, mini behavioral experts, to make them better leaders, to make them better understand how their people are wired and how to get the most out of them. The predictive index is simple. It's just measuring motivating drives. And once we know those drives, we can predict their needs, their unique needs, and then their behaviors with that. And performance problems are always the gap between how the person is wired versus the role they're in. As long as they have all the skills and training that they need from a technical standpoint, that gap is always behavioral. And that's really where we come in and, really cut down turnover, especially in sales, increase employee engagement, all the good things that come along with getting the right people engaged in the right seats.
Yeah. So because I know a lot of agents are probably listening to this and they're like, this sounds great, but it sounds like something like insurance companies would do. And it is, right? Where's the value for like a hometown insurance agency? Ma and pa, maybe 1 or 2, 3, 4 employees. Yeah. Where's the value in that?
So it scales all the way down to one hire, right? And when you've made many mistakes in hiring, turnover is probably the most expensive part of running a business. So if you hire somebody, they last for 6 months and they leave, the cost of turnover is pretty expensive in terms of now you have to go re-recruit. That agency owner has to now interview 50 people, maybe 100 people just to get to a couple good candidates. Then they have to train them and onboard them. So there's a huge kind of I would say it's a true cost, tangible, but it's also intangible. I joke around with people in small business owners. I'm like, look, if we put that cost of turnover on your P&L as a line item, how would that change the health of your business, right? But we don't do that. We kind of just brush it under the rug. And we're like, I just need somebody in the seat, right? They don't kind of measure twice and cut once, and they don't think about what it's actually costing them to turn even that one rep over. One good example in insurance is one of my clients moved from DISC to Predictive Index, not necessarily mom and pop's 1 to 5, a little bigger than that, but he was interviewing probably 150 people a year. He was hiring probably about maybe 50, and he was retaining like less than 5 per year out of that whole thing. So think about all of the hours he spent even just interviewing that he saved not interviewing the people that are not wired for the role, so not interviewing the wrong people.
So what this, like, as you're talking here, one of the things that's in my mind, like you talked about really dialing in what that is and then being able to just really fill a pipeline, frankly, with candidates that meet the criteria, right? So one of the things I'm looking at is like, man, if I wanted to recruit, which in one of my businesses, we're getting ready to go pretty hardcore on recruiting. How would that work? Like if let's say, Brian, I wanted to bring on 100 agents, not as employees, they're 1099, they run their own agency, but I want them underneath me in hierarchy because that's a whole side to insurance, right?
Yep.
So I want them underneath me where I'm kind of a team leader, but they're still running their own business and growing their own dream and whatever. But right now, the model for that type of recruiting at that level, at that scale, is throw a big party, make it look big and flashy and fancy so you attract everyone. And it's like, hey, come be your own boss, make $1 million a year. Like it's just this big rah-rah. You get as many people there as you can, you get them all signed up, and then most of them fail. In fact, in our industry, 92% don't make it 24 months.
Yeah.
Capacity, right? And that's a big part of why, because they shouldn't have been in the industry, at least in that capacity, in that role of entrepreneurship or whatever, in the first place. How could that help me? Like if I wanted to put on 100 agents over the next year and have those agents stick, I don't want to just bring agents on. I want to do it. Like I want to put on 100 agents that are going to go make $100,000 their first year. And that's going to take of work and adoption of skill sets and mentalities and that most people can't latch onto. For every 100 I interview, find, 2 or 3 or 4 that actually stick. So how would this all, how could I implement that and then scale it?
So any good leader has a ton of people that will run through walls for them, right? If you're a good leader, you can get people to run through walls for you. Now, with what you do in that scenario, you would create the behavioral job target for the role that you want to hire for those 100 people, right? And it might be, chief executive officer of each agency. And if you know and you have good insights, I know you do, but other stakeholders who have a good idea of what that looks like. And then you can also take anybody who's already doing it, that's a rock star in the role, and you use that as a role model and one more data point. So now if you can still do the rah-rah. I think it's, there's some value in it because you still want to get people excited about it. But now you're screening all of them cognitively and then from a behavioral job match perspective, and also screening them for culture fit, right? Do they have the entrepreneurial grit to make it? I'll give you an example. I built a sales team for a medical laser company using this stuff as a 1099 sales kind of director, fractional director. But I took former gym owners who had entrepreneurial grit. They understood how difficult it was to run a business. And they also met the predictive index behavioral demands for the role that we've defined. And we brought on 10 or 12 of them. 10 of them out of the 12 are still left, but very similar. It's sink or swim, 100% commission, 1099. They had to learn a brand new industry, drinking from a fire hose, but they had the entrepreneurial grit and they were wired for the role. So I bet everything on that alone.
So if I was to talk to my partners, and I'm not saying I'm going to.
Oh, yeah.
I might.
But I might.
So if I was to talk to my partners and everybody listening or we're watching this on YouTube, feel free to hit Brian up and duplicate. But if we were to do something, we put that all together. Now, instead of having to spend our time, effort, energy, and resources on throwing a big, flashy, fancy party, it's no, we have this very narrow target. Now we can ask ourselves, who fits that target or who has a high likelihood of fitting that target? We market exactly to that: gym owners, used car salesmen, or whatever it is, right? And we fill a room at 100 of those, and out of 100 of those, we're a lot more likely to find 30 that meet those criteria, they fit, and away we go. And now we, in 3 or 4 events per year, we landed our whole goal. And they're the right people, they're sticking, they got the grid, they do all these things, right? Is that kind of what you're talking about? How I would utilize that in that regard?
Yeah. And it's just to make sure, because, we've all experienced this. Somebody we've interviewed just got out of the interview. We're like, wow, that person, guy or girl, was amazing. They're going to be a rock star. They're going to crush it. And they might start off strong, but then on day 91, they show up as a completely different person. You're like, what the hell happened to that one? And they just don't work out, right? And it's because people excited about new opportunities will try and do and be anything. They'll throw a mask on. They'll try to do it. And just for the opportunity of it, they're not self-aware enough to know what they're getting into and what they're good at and what they're not good at, how they're wired. So they unfortunately learn on your dollar that they're not wired for the roles. And then they pull themselves out or you fire them, right?
That's so funny. So I always tell this story, we have our groups in our mastermind, the highest level. We talk a lot about hiring, and maybe we ought to have you come on and do a training or something for these folks sometime if you're down for it. But
I'd love it.
One of the things that we do is we talk a lot about hiring, recruiting, good practices, and all sorts of stuff. And I share a story this one time about this gal I hired. Could have been a dude, so chicks, as ladies, women, gals, whatever the fuck, I don't care, get butthurt at me. Could have been a dude, but it wasn't. It was a gal. I hired her for a CSR role, and I was so excited, dude. Did this interview. I was like, man, she's saying all the right things, doing all the right things. The one caveat to it is that she was I don't know if she still is. This was 10 years ago, but she's a really big woman. Really big woman. I try hard not to discriminate. When I had my auto repair shops, I hired big dudes.
Right.
I hired a big dude, 400 plus pound dude as a door knocker for my insurance agency. And guess what? dude did a damn good job. And so
Yeah.
I have some really, really big people in my family, and maybe I just grew up sensitive to that. So I've tried not to discriminate. But other than that, that's something that other people I know would maybe look at a lot differently. I was just stoked. And that didn't even bother me. It wasn't even like in the mindset, right?
Right.
I was so stoked. Monday morning comes around. She rolls in her first day. And this gal, like, figured she's probably like 5'2", 5'3", and probably pushing 350 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty good size. She comes in a, like, when she came to the interview, dressed nice, looks nice, everything's right. She came in a black spaghetti strap tank top, no bra, I think it was a tutu, but it might have been a skirt. She had over the weekend dyed her hair purple.
Wow.
And it was pulled back in kind of a messy ponytail type of thing.
Yeah.
And so here it gets worse, man. Like in her hand, she's got a big gulp in one hand, and in the other hand, she just had like a bag of groceries. And I was like, okay, whatever. She's bringing her stuff in. I talked to her about her dress. I sent her home and was like, you got to come back. Like, I can't be having customers come in, and this is day one. Like, she was
right.
The interview. I was so excited. She was so good on the phone talking to all the things, right? She only worked for me for about a week, and I let her go.
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
That bag of groceries wasn't groceries. It was just like from Costco or Sam's Club, bulk order chili flavored lentil beans.
Oh, wow.
That was lunch every day. It was like this. And it just kind of bugged everybody in the whole office, because she would like ripping farts and belching and like do the whole 9 yards. So I'm telling these people in this mastermind group about this. Like, this is why it's important to hire right. Even if you feel right about it, vet it out more, like really think about it. And I made the comment, I was like, she came in like all frou-frou, colorful hair, tutu on, like some kind of Tinkerbell. And this guy in our group was like, yeah, but she ended up being a hell of a Taco Bell, right? So that's been the running joke, is don't hire a Taco Bell.
It happens. People they put on their best face for those interviews. And if you're interviewing for any kind of customer service or sales role, unfortunately, those are the best bullshitters, which, rightfully so. In a good way, they're just very good at it, right? So you just need some objective data to go along with this. Now, I can't guarantee that if she was a good fit behaviorally, and then she still pulled that in the interview, that specific instance wouldn't have happened, but it would give you better clarity into that human being before you hire them. There is like one thing, like if your audience takes anything from this whole half hour, you can take this away. And this is one I use all the time. So our natural wiring. So Carson, if I give you the predictive index behavioral assessment and I got your result, we can think of your natural wiring as this rubber band in its natural state. It can be like this all day long, right? If the role required you to be like this as well, you can come into work on a daily basis and perform well. Now, we can do and be anything, but the question is, again, how long and how well before we snap back? So like a rubber band, we can stretch in any way, shape, or form, but it's always under constant tension, energy, and effort. So that person wearing the mask is stretching to meet the demands of the role. And then the moment they let up, they snap back to their natural state. That's what I'm talking about with that day 91 syndrome. Performance problems kind of rear their head, or maybe they're doing well still and they're performing well, but man, they're a wreck inside because of the stress of having to show up every day as somebody they're not. And it doesn't take away like the ability to grow and have a growth mindset and handle adversity, because you can find that, as much adversity as you want in your own lane. But it's kind of like, if you're a point guard and you go to work every day and you're forced to be a power forward, you're not going to be an effective power forward. You can still do it, but you're better off playing point guard and doing all the skills and drills for a point guard to become the best point guard you can be. And then you can go to work every day and not stress every day trying to be somebody you're not, right?
That's so against like the flow, because in sales, it's all about like put yourself under that pressure, put yourself under that stress, like stretch yourself beyond all of it. And that's the culture, right? Because that's where the growth happens. And in one way, but I feel like maybe that same, we apply the same language, but it's a different context. And because it's a different context, that language, it just doesn't fit. Like, you're not supposed to stretch and strain in that way.
Well, yes, but let's take the example of the 100, right? If we have 100 new reps and let's say 80 of them are wired for the role and 20 of them aren't quite wired for the role, and you apply that same concept, those 80 are going to be left standing versus those 20, right? Because they're able to handle the outside stressors of putting yourself in really awkward, uncomfortable positions, cold calling people, door knocking, doing the sales thing. That's kind of like the tactical side of sales. But they're able to endure it much better because they're wired for the actual behavioral demands of the role. But when you have too many stresses, compiling and something's brand new for somebody and they're now all of a sudden not making that much money, I don't care if you promise that, if you stick it out for 2 years, you'll be making 250. Look at all these people who've done it right for you. All of that stress compounds, and the people that aren't wired for it, for sure, check out first, right? Because it's coming from every angle possible.
So if folks wanted to reach out, if they had a question, comment, concern, if they wanted to give you a try, you have a try me free button or on the shelf at Walmart, or how do folks get a hold of you? What could they expect if they reach out to you?
So readyaimclimb.com is my company and website. You can take the PI for free on there. I'll get basically a report that I can send you. It's 5 pages, very in-depth. So, that's a huge value as a leader from a self-awareness perspective to understand how you're wired, but also you can understand how others might perceive you as well. So that's kind of the first step. And then after that, we can always set up kind of like a needs analysis to see if this is even possibly a good fit for you. But really, this is good for anybody who's hiring for 1 role or 100 roles. It doesn't matter. I work with companies that are small, all the way up to, $250 million a year paving companies. People problems are people problems, and hiring is hiring, whether it's 1 role or 100. So use objective data, I think would make things a lot less stressful and painful for you as the business owner, because there's so many other things to worry about. You don't want to play the whack-a-mole of filling positions and people problems, right?
Yeah. What are, if somebody worked with you, what are they going to expect, budget-wise? Because if you go to a headhunter firm, they're like, hey, well, we're going to find you that perfect person, but we want 20% of their first year's salary in compensation. It's like,
right.
I want people to make a good living. I'm going to pay them $100,000. It cost me $20,000 just to get my right person. Like, holy shit.
Yeah. This scales all the way down to making 1 hire, and you'll have 50 candidates that you can screen. So that's how far it scales down. And that costs right around $3,000 for that. But that includes creating the job target with you, making sure that it's right, because that's the important part. That job target has to be right if you're going to screen 100 people through it. And that's kind of where the gold is figuring out with your team, what is important for this next hire? How do we make sure we're getting the right target? And then if we're confident in that, now we can begin screening and interviewing those top candidates based on that data.
Yeah, that's super affordable for folks listening. Just so you're clear, I have one of my big isms is we sell through service. So we sell through sales, we sell through service. All my CSRs I've required to do sales, but not outbound calls. Hey, phone rings, you calling about this? I'm already looking at your account to see what you don't have. Hey, can I get you on the phone with one of our advisors about that, right? And, they get a piece of that. We incentivize them and whatever. I don't think I've ever had a CSR, long-term CSR, somebody that worked out for me for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Never had one who didn't consistently, once a quarter, find an annuity that I made 15, 20, 30 grand on that one. And they're already doing their job. And then I just made another $15,000 on some annuity they found, they found the opportunity. It's $3 grand to find them once is actually very affordable if you're finding that person. But for me, a CSR is going to be willing to sell. They're going to ask the extra questions. They're going to read between the lines. They're going to get me back on the phone with that client so I can lock that thing down. And that investment pays itself off quick.
Yeah. And if you have a rock star in the role already, you can use that as one data point to say, okay, this person, if I can clone that person and have 10 more, Or for you, for all of your clients who you're coaching, what if we can kind of come to some kind of standard for what that role, the best person in the role would be? There's so many ways to kind of slice it, but if you can have one of the girls who finds you $30K extra a year because of the way she does it, you'll know that based on how she's wired, chances are that if I just get more of those people, they're going to still do the same thing as long as I give them the same training and knowledge share, right?
Right. No, that's cool, man. Anything else you want to leave folks before we jump off for the day?
Not really. I think just as a business owner and leader, self-awareness should be one of your biggest focus. If you can't lead yourself, you can't lead other people. So start with yourself, understand how you're wired, and then go on to your team and understand how they're wired so you can give them what they need and meet them where they're at to bring out the best in them.
Cool, dude. I love that. And it was your website one more time, totally free?
Yep, readyaimclimb.com.
I think anybody that listens to this should go do that. So I'm going to go do that. ReadyAimClimb.com. Let me put it in my phone real quick before I let you go, or I'm going to forget. Lord knows I will forget. Cool, man. I appreciate you being here. Seriously.
Thanks for having me on.
Let's link back up, and I'd love to have you come and do some training for an hour or so with smaller group, real small group, 10, 20 people. These are all agency owners that are doing $500,000, $1 million a year and trying to figure out how to go to 2, 3, 5 million.
Right.
And a big part of that is scale. Like at some point you're at capacity. Now you've got to grow your bandwidth through growing your systems, processes, and people. Right. So
yeah. I like to say you can't build capacity on top of dysfunction. So if you don't have all the right pieces in place, the right people in place, there's no way you're gonna scale. So that's an important piece of it all. Everything else you do, plus this, plus some other important things, I think can really accelerate that scaling ability.
Dude, I appreciate it, man. I'll shoot you a DM. We'll chat about it, get you linked up, and have you come do some training for us. But thank you for being here. For real, folks, if I were you, I'd reach out and at least do the assessment.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, I appreciate you being here. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Thanks, Carson. Thanks, everyone.
See you, man. This has been another excellent episode of the Rev Your Agency podcast. Remember something. Nothing happens if you don't do the damn work. So take what you got from this. Take what you've learned and go implement it today. It's not about having everything. It's about having one thing and implementing it every day so that you can take your production, your agency, and the lives of everybody around you to the next level. If you could use some help with it, hit us up at revagencysyndicate.com and jump in. We run a mastermind that is dedicated and hell-bent 10 times more than this podcast could ever be into helping you have the education, collaboration, and accountability that you need to go to the next level. Whether you are captive, independent, whether you're life only, or you focus on multiple lines, it doesn't matter. We're here to help. Let us help you.